Hello and welcome to episode 41 of Generations Apart. I'm Jay.
And I'm Robbie.
And on today's episode, we're talking all about the iPhone 15, 1 month on, looking at our first impressions of the device as we've been using it, and also some of the news stories around the device and possible problems you may face if you decide to buy one. Before we get into all that iPhone goodness, Robbie, what's new with you?
So what's new with me this week? It's actually not something new, but something that I'm excited about because it's the time of year where we usually see fireworks around. But what we've seen in recent years, I'm actually really excited about, is the drone light shows. I don't know if you've ever seen some of these in person, but they're absolutely incredible. And again, from like a sustainability point of view, there's less wastage, there's less pollution. But some of these displays are so, let me just mute that, was really loud, are so incredible. And I just wanted to show quickly some videos of the world record, the biggest drone display ever, which I believe was in Japan earlier this year. And just some of the displays that you can do with these drones flying around with these lights. It's so well coordinated. It's 3D, it's moving around in the sky. Have you seen these in person before?
I've seen a very small example. So when we were at Disney World, they did like for the I think it was the 30th anniversary of Disneyland Paris. They did the usual fireworks show, complemented with some drone work. So there was a set of drones up in the air that were basically kind of transforming into a Mickey silhouette, and then they'd go into the sort of 30th anniversary sign and a couple of other shapes. It wasn't anything on the scale of what you were just showing then.
Yeah,
but it was. I mean, still probably cost a fortune and. It would have been several, probably at least 100 drones or more. But yeah, the stuff that we're now seeing is incredible, isn't it? I think I saw was it the I think New Year's Eve this year. They did some in London as well.
Yeah,
as part of the New Year's Eve celebrations, and that was really impressive.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely here for it. I think I love fireworks. I always did think that it was a bit wasteful, especially you had local fire displays. You can always just walk around and see like bits of paper and sticks and stuff that's just thrown from the fireworks. So I love the fact that this is kind of taking off as a bit of a trend, and it just looks so cool. It looks like a hologram in the sky. It's crazy.
I think what I'm waiting for is, and it maybe already has been done, I've just not seen it, but you know that scene in Lord of the Rings, in the first Lord of the Rings movie, where they're in the Shire and is it Took? One of the Tooks let off one of Gandalf's fireworks, and it's a dragon firework, and it basically goes into the sky, sort of swoops around. This dragon appears, swoops around, and kind of comes back down at the Shire, and all the hobbits panic, thinking it's a real dragon, and then it kind of goes off and finishes as a firework. I'm waiting for someone to do that. I want to see a coordinated drone show where they assemble what looks like a dragon and it swoops around the sky. I'm sure that's been done.
I think I might have
kind of what I want to
seen
see.
it. I think I've seen it might have been Chinese New Year. I've seen dragon, like a dragon drone thing. I'm sure I've seen it before. But yeah, very cool. Very cool.
I think it's an interesting one. I do get what you're saying from an environmental perspective. I think it's fireworks, not great. I don't know what the pollution levels are and how the real impact of the fireworks themselves are, but as you say, the wastage from the cartridges or however you want to describe the rockets is not great, especially, animals as well. It's not great for us. It upsets animals. I mean, you look at Disney, they do 2 to 3 of these across. If you look at Florida alone, they do 2 or 3 of these a day.
Yeah.
Across the various parks, all at night, but they'll do one in each park every night. So they must get through an absolute metric ton of this stuff. So you've got to think that that's going to be better for them. I guess there's also the consideration around battery, power, wastage, how many of these drones, how long do the drones last? I know if they lose one, they're like, I think I read an article that said something like 50, 60 grand if they lose one out the sky, or
really
something horrific like that.
Oh, wow.
They're not cheap. That I may have over-exaggerated that slightly, but I'm sure I read an article once that said, like, if one of them spins out and disappears, which is not uncommon, they do lose them during the shows.
Really?
They're quite pricey, and maybe I've exaggerated that number slightly. Don't hold me to that in the chat. But the I know that when they do the London ones, for example, there was some talk afterwards about the amazing show, and they were asking the organisers about, they said, oh yeah, we lost a couple. I think it's quite common. And of course, if they lose them and they can't retrieve them, so if they're doing that over a body of water like the Thames,
Oh yeah.
and it just drops, you ain't getting that back. Best will in the world, you're not getting that back. And probably if it drops out of the sky, you're probably not going to retrieve much of it anyway,
No.
because by the time it's fallen from that kind of height and smashed onto
Well,
whatever surface below.
They've usually got some kind of mechanism to slow them down, even if they're running out of battery or something like that.
Yeah,
though
but
if
I don't think it's necessarily.
They
Well, I was going to say as well, bear in mind the number of them that are moving in the sky. There must be. I mean, they're incredibly well coordinated, but there's probably an opportunity there somewhere for something to go wrong and a couple of them to collide, or you only need that, one of them to go rogue and not follow its pattern, and then the impact. But they are fantastic. I'm not taking away from it. I think
no, it's true. I'm surprised.
I just wonder whether the environmental side is offset by the amount of metal, plastic parts, batteries. The actual the drones themselves. I mean, of course, they're probably recyclable, and repairable.
Not if they fall in the Thames, I bet.
They're not like they're not a one-time use. But yeah, they are great, and I'm looking forward to seeing some fireworks this weekend. Anyway, I think the one thing that's missing from the drones, which I think would be interesting to see how they replicate, is the noise. There is just something kind of special about that. The whoosh of the rocket, the bang or the crackle. There's something quite magical about that. Having said that, some of the best fireworks I've ever seen were set to music.
Yes.
And actually, the music dominates the explosions.
Yeah.
And instead, it's the visuals. So maybe with these drone shows being set to music, I think the other thing with the drones at the moment, I mean, they're incredible, but they lack the speed. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's something about the frenetic nature of fireworks as they fly into the sky and then explode. So that, I guess as that technology improves, maybe we'll see the drones get faster and they'll be able to do more incredible things.
Have you seen those racing drones, by the way? There's definitely drones that can do it.
Well, I went, so in Birmingham City Centre, they've just opened up a Hasselblad DJI store, like a combo store, and they've got all the drones out. And I actually went in there the other day for a walk around. And yeah, I mean, I didn't obviously play with them properly, but I saw some of the different levels. I've got the Mavic Mini, just a little DJI mode, and it's great fun. I've had a few heart-stopping moments with it where the wind's taken it and I've suddenly panicked. The very first time I flew it, I sent it up from my garden, and just as it got above the house, obviously the wind levels changed because the house wasn't deflecting the wind anymore, and it just went and it started to drift down my road, and I was like, oh my god, my and I'd only just bought it literally the first flight, and it's disappearing off down the road. But I've used it loads of times since.
Yeah,
and tried to push the boundaries of how far I'd send it. But the racing drones looked incredible with the little I'm not going to call them VR goggles, but I suppose they are
kind of like VR goggles. Yeah.
The goggles that you wear, and I mean they look pretty badass as well. I'm not going to lie, like some VR headsets look proper nerdy. The goggles they designed for these the DJI flying drones, they look really cool. They look like some sort of cyberpunk kind of aesthetic. They've got these sort of sharp edges and like bits, and obviously they've got the antennas, which they kind of build into the design, jutting off them. They're really cool. So
DJI actually have a version of they've got a racing one, which is more, because there's the proper racing ones that are like really expensive, but then there's these ones. I mean, it's not cheap. It's still almost $1,000. But in terms of racing ones,
that's not bad though.
And more popular ones.
I saw that one. And that was the headset I was referring to. It almost looks like some sort of Ant-Man kind of mask. If you saw that in the Marvel universe, you would absolutely believe that was some sort of villainous bad guy. And the drone itself looks really cool and slightly intimidating.
It's supposed to be quite tough because, as you can imagine, you'd hit it into walls. If you told me that was straight out of RoboCop and that was a gun, not a camera on the front, I'd 100% believe you. It's got a real RoboCop aesthetic. It does. I like it. Yeah, I've been tempted by this, but it's just so expensive.
Yeah, and I think the reality of them is as well, it's a lot of time and skill to be able to fly these things and fly them well. I mean, you may well be an expert with remote vehicles, but I've tried remote control cars and stuff in the past and with mixed degrees of success. And it's always frustrated me because the controllers on these things look like video game controllers. So my brain goes, I can do this. But then when you hold them, you're like, this is all wrong. Why do these sticks go in different directions? Why are they controlling the things that they control? They don't map well to a video game experience. They're not the same. Because I think what you tend to find is one stick is going to be your forward backward motion, and then your other stick is your kind of left-right motion, which instantly is weird because I'm used to an analog stick kind of doing most of those things in one. But then it's the verticality side, isn't it? It's the additional axis that you need to consider, which I think on the Mavic it's controlled by it's either like a rocker or it's like shoulder style buttons. I can't remember. It's probably different on the flying ones because of the nimble way that you need to control them. But it just felt a bit alien. It doesn't. I always find whenever I pick the Mavic up, which unfortunately, it's often it's months apart, I then pick it up and go, oh, this just doesn't feel right. And in fact, I just had a very weird and slightly aside thought, but related to the topic of the iPhone 15. I'm not sure how I'm going to connect my Mavic Pro, my Mavic Mini now to my phone because it's a Lightning.
There must be a Type-C.
I'm going to have to try and find some sort of adapter because it's a Lightning or USB, mini USB, micro USB, whatever the old one was.
That is old.
So I'm like, how do I connect my phone to that now? That's the first accessory I've had to think about where that's become a problem. Anyway.
First time I've heard of USB-C being a problem.
Well, old gadgets. Right. Anyway, so we'll move on from the drone fireworks. And before we get into the iPhone, I just wanted to touch on something that I had seen when doing a bit of my LinkedIn posting, actually. So I did post this last week on LinkedIn. But I thought it was interesting to talk about, given that we're talking about Apple. And it's something we touched on during the presentation back in September, I think it was. We've done so many of these now. Which was that Apple is reportedly working on generative AI. Now, that's probably not a massive surprise. I think we all knew that was likely going to be going on in the background, but they've avoided AI so heavily in so many of their conversations and presentations recently. Now, this has obviously not come from an official Apple source, so again, let's take this with a pinch of salt. But apparently the rumor is that the generative AI tool they're working on has been coined AppleGPT.
Okay.
And it's based on their large language model, Ajax.
Ajax?
So, yeah. No, I'd not heard of that. So,
well, Ajax is it's a framework in JavaScript, I think, to call APIs.
There's probably just a separate use for the same name. It's also a football club in Holland, which I used to call Ajax as a child until I realised it was pronounced Ajax. Back in Football Manager days, or Championship Manager as it was then. So the only thing that's really said in the article that I found was that Apple, as always, are taking a cautious approach to ensuring user security and privacy, but they are feeling the pressure from competition like Google and Meta, who of course have been taking some big strides. Although I will say it was interesting to see after we'd reacted to the Google Pixel 8 Pro, I think it was called, that some of their feedback post-launch has not been as positive.
Really?
As perhaps the reception. Yeah, I mean, it's been mixed, as the things always are, aren't they? You can always find someone saying something great and someone saying something negative. But I've seen a few reviews that kind of suggest it's good, but there are still some problems with it. Which, it's always going to be the way, isn't it? There's always going to be something that people want to be different or better.
Yeah, I think that Google always kind of experiment with stuff early. I mean, most Android manufacturers do the same. They experiment with stuff early before it's like fully polished. So there's often things that come out that it doesn't work right, or it's not as good as maybe it was suggested, or it's not quite there yet. That kind of stuff.
And I guess that's the issue, isn't it? With it's often the thing that's leveled at Apple, which is, well, you're just releasing something Android did 4 years ago, and it's like, yeah, they probably are, and it's probably done better, but then it's whether or not actually waiting for 3 or 4 years to get the feature that your Android using mates have had for years, but maybe theirs didn't work quite as well. What's better? What's the payoff? Do you want to benefit from the tech early? You want to wait till it's refined? I think it's different for every user, isn't it? And they don't always get it right. It's not always perfect. I think it's fair to say.
We'll talk about that today.
Yeah, so we talk about the iPhone then.
Yeah, bring it on.
So I guess a couple of things just to caveat my experience with, so that you can understand, I guess, where I'm coming from. And obviously, Robbie, you know this already, but for the listeners' benefit. So I've upgraded to the 15 Pro Max. I went for kind of top end. I've gone for the terabyte storage and the full shebang. So a couple of things to note from my experience. My last phone was the iPhone 12 Pro. So it's been a few years since I upgraded. So obviously I am measuring the differences based on a sizable jump in a 3-year period. It's It's also the first time I've gone for the Max or the Plus size phone. I've had one before. I had a work phone many years ago. It was the Plus. It was just too big for me. But I decided to jump in mainly for the telephoto lens. A feature grabber. I was like, I must have all the features. So that's the thing to note. And prior to that 12 Pro, I was on the iPhone X. So I've gone. I used to upgrade kind of every year or every couple of years. I've tried to move away to sort of a 3-year cycle, just to be kind to my wallet, basically, give me a year of not paying for things. Because I tend to buy these things on the 24-month interest-free and just pay, a monthly fee for them, rather than buy them outright. So it means I get a year off every third year.
Yeah.
So those are just a couple of caveats. So I'm on the iPhone 15 Pro. I went for the natural titanium.
Nice. That seems to be the color to get. I think everyone's been raving about.
Yeah. So just for the benefit of those watching on YouTube, I'm sort of showing it on camera now. And you can see actually, like I was worried it was going to feel a bit too big in my hands, as the plus sizes often had. But because they've shrunk this down physically and in weight, but maintain the larger screen size, actually doesn't feel, and it didn't feel radically different when I took it out of the box compared to my 12 Pro in hand. Now, I have noticed as I've used it that even with quite large hands, and I do have quite large hands for those watching, quite long fingers, I still find it quite difficult to get corner to corner. So there's this kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, almost like a shuffling activity that has to go on to get to the top, the topmost corner that's away from my thumb. But it happens rarely. And I think from a sort of software design point of view, most of the things that you need, at least as a right-handed person, are positioned somewhere that, one-handed control works fine.
They've got extra features and stuff to help with that as well. And if you've done the slide down so that the whole screen slides down.
Oh, no, I haven't.
It's quite cool. It might not be enabled by default on yours, but I think it's like an accessibility feature. So if you've got it in your hand, you can slide down, and the bar that you're at the bottom. You slide down, say about halfway down the screen to the bar, then the whole screen just moves down, so then you can reach the top of the screen.
Yeah, nice.
Quite clever.
Yeah, I'd like to say I've never needed that, but and even now, to be honest, it doesn't take much of a movement to get the thumb up where it needs to go. But it's noticeable. It is noticeable. So I'll focus on the hardware first. I have to say, the rounded edges, the device in hand, the feel of the titanium, it's really nice. Yeah, it's really slick. It's nice to touch. It looks really smart. I mean, you've obviously seen it, but you kind of handled it when I first got it. I think it just feels like a really premium device, and of course it is for the price bracket that it goes into. But it genuinely feels it. It doesn't. Nothing feels cheap. Nothing feels kind of like they shortcut anything on here. And what I really like, and I think it's called the action button, isn't it? I think they've called it now. Yeah. Is that change from that sort of the old silence clicker switch, or whatever you want to class it as, to the new action button, which can be customized. I hadn't changed mine, honestly, from silence until it was last weekend. And I thought, actually, I'm going to make that my camera button. Now, which felt a little bit unnecessary because you can obviously get to the camera in a number of different ways.
I love it, though. I miss that from my Android phones. I think it's, even though there's buttons all over the place to set up your camera, there's nothing quite like just clicking a physical button to turn on the camera and just start shooting straight away.
Well, I must admit that, and that's what it is. I can wake the phone up, I can quickly get to that shortcut on the home screen and launch the camera. But actually, a quick press of that button and I'm in has been really useful for sort of shooting pictures and videos with the kids over the weekend. I mean, I've had to retrain my brain to remember the button is there.
Yeah.
And that's what it does. But it is much more useful. The only thing I wish now is that there was a way to customize what the camera button on my home page did to change it to something else.
But I don't
think you can change them, because now I've got two buttons that get me to the same place quite quickly.
Yeah.
The one thing with the action button is you can configure what it takes you into. So if you, for example, are happy with your camera button on your home screen being generic, get me into the camera app, but you'd like that button on the side to be selfie, then you can make it specific to a type of camera or the direction of the camera or video if you prefer. So you can kind of customize to some degree.
That's cool.
Exactly what it does when it launches the camera. But that's been really good. You will notice, for those keen-eyed, that this is not currently sporting a case, and I haven't had a case on it since I bought it. Nor is there a screen protector, which always horrifies me when they ask me. But I haven't had a screen protector on my phone since before the X. I haven't had a screen protector on since probably my iPhone 5 something. So
Really?
yeah, I just haven't needed it. I mean, I must admit, I'm pretty careful with my phones. I've only ever broken one, and I think I've told you this. I broke it annoyingly about a week before I was due to trade it in. It was my iPhone X, and I lost about 240 quid in trading value as a result, which was really devastating. But I took it out of the case for whatever reason. I was like, I'm just going to handle it without a case for a week. It doesn't matter. It's going back soon. Got into my car. It slipped out of the pocket because it was obviously much smoother. There was no grip on the phone at all. Yeah. Slipped out. And as I slammed the door shut, I slammed it on the phone, and then the phone hit the ground, and I shattered it. I did a fantastic. So having never broken one in all the years since having an iPhone, and I've had one since the very first iPhone, I managed to shatter this one, and I did it in dramatic and incredible style. It was well and truly shattered. It wasn't like a small crack. It was destroyed, which is quite gutting. But I'll explain the reasons why. So normally, as I mentioned, I am a case. The day I get it, and I've been very, as a true Apple pony, I have bought Apple cases on day one. I've often had the leather ones, and I've really liked them. You mentioned before we started recording the natural patina on the wallet.
I do like the patina on the wallet.
And I enjoy that. I really liked it. So I've had a couple of tan leather ones, and I had a blue leather one on my last phone. But obviously they've stopped doing those now for all very good reasons. I've got no beef with that at all, pun intended. But the natural weave that they've replaced it with, I was cautious. I was like, well, I want to see it first. I want to how does it feel? How does it look? And I'll be honest and say I'm glad I waited.
Yeah,
because I went into the store maybe a week or two ago, just while I was in town, and I went to have a look at them. I thought, I'll go and check them out. Maybe I should buy one. I was getting a little nervous about not having a case on it, but honestly, I really don't like them.
Yeah, and you're not the only one. I've heard a lot of people who have complained about it. It scratches quite easily, which I'm surprised at.
That was my first. Well, that was the first observation. Yeah. So, and it's telling because literally every one of the display models has a case on. So in that picture you've just brought up on screen there for those watching on YouTube, which is just straight out the Apple website, they look quite nice. They look pretty smart, and they do feel nice. So the actual woven texture feels good in your hand. What's not clear from those pictures, I don't think, maybe the latter pictures will show it, is that the edge of the phone actually isn't the woven material. It's like a plastic.
Right. Which
feels a little bit cheap, if I'm honest. It feels a little bit cheap. And the woven material on the back, as you mentioned, scratches incredibly easy. Now, I didn't go out of my way to try and scratch them. Maybe some people have as they've gone into the store, but every display model, without fail, had like fingernail marks on or scuff marks on. And I thought if the display models, which I appreciate, are going to get handled a little bit, if all the display models are that battered already, how long is it going to last in my pocket before, in and out the pocket, on and off the desk, whatever, before it too gets scratched to hell?
Oh, yeah.
So I have steered clear of that model for now. I did have a look at the silicon ones when I was in there, and actually there's a couple of nice silicon ones. But I'm just really reluctant, as I'm really enjoying the kind of natural feel of the phone, to stick it in a case that I'm not kind of really into. And I thought the leather cases in the past have really kind of added a little something. They feel premium, like the Pro device. They felt they complemented each other. The new woven ones just feel a bit cheap, to be honest.
Yeah.
And likewise with the wallet. The wallet, it didn't feel any better.
The woven wallet
felt nice in hand, but again, they were scratching up very, very easily. So
part of me wonders whether they're doing that on purpose, because there's you can get natural patinas from like leather, but I wonder if that's what they're trying to go for with this fine woven stuff, is some kind of natural aging patina. But
it doesn't look good though. It
too quickly.
Yeah, but it doesn't look good either though. Like the natural patina on the leather is it gives it a nice look, doesn't it? Whereas these woven, they're not patinaing, they're just scratching. They just look scuffed and battered. I will say my current wallet has seen better days, and I'm a bit disappointed in this as well, to be honest. I've had this for less time than the case. I only bought this maybe a year or so ago.
Right.
And I won't try and show it on the camera, but basically around the edges where the cards are going in and out or on the corners, the leather is all but peeled away. It's very thin. Right. Thin and stretched over. So now it's through to the bare plastic underneath, which is at least coloured to look like the actual the device itself or the wallet, but it's just, it looks a bit battered now. So the patina you're seeing on the camera is great, but then like around these edges, it's all battered and ripped, and I'll be honest, like it goes in and out of my pocket. I'm not kind of throwing this thing around or beating it around. I look after my tech, so I don't put it under any sort of undue stress or strain, and yet it's still damaged. So, and the other thing I've noticed is that the wallet really doesn't grip on as well to the phone as it did on the case. So I don't know whether that's just the strength of the magnets through the metal versus the strength of the magnets through the case.
Has it always been like that? Because it can like demagnetize over time as well, can't it?
No, I mean, like on the case before, it was like locked in. It was hard to get off. Even after a year or so, it was really hard to get that off. Whereas on the phone, it's much easier. It slides off. Now that's kind of, it's convenient when I need to get it off quickly in pocket, because I used to struggle, honestly, sometimes to flick the wallet off the case. It was so strong. But also then I guess the con to that is it doesn't feel quite as secured. I feel a little bit more nervous that I'm going to lose it by accident, which you don't want to do with your wallet, of course. So I did tear the other case apart, actually, because when I got rid of the phone, there was nothing for me to do with the old battered case. I wanted to see what the MagSafe looked like inside, so I just cut it open. And I've kept all the little magnets. There were lots of tiny little square magnets.
In like a ring, right?
Arranged in a ring, and then the little sort of like stick at the bottom to kind of lock it in. There was also then like some sort of a cable that was kind of in there as well, like a ribbon cable.
Yeah.
Which presumably was something to do with the letting the phone know that it was docked or connected, or something to do with the conductivity of the wireless charging. I'm not quite sure, but it was quite interesting to pull it apart. But I've kept all the little magnets for future craft projects that might be useful for little miniatures or something nerdy.
Cool. I like that.
So I guess that from a hardware point of view, that's kind of all there is to say. I am going to run caseless for a little longer and see how I get on. I have got Apple Care for this one for the first time, which I guess is my case to some degree. So if I break it, smash it, damage it, I can take it in and they'll fix it for me.
Handy. No scratches or anything yet then?
Nope, not a mark on it so far. And that's one of the things that, and we'll come to it later on, I suppose, which is that sort of the weathering of the paint. Now, obviously, I've gone for the natural titanium, so that shouldn't be a problem for me.
Yeah.
But we'll touch on whether or not that's a genuine issue later on. So that's the hardware. I guess the other things I wanted to touch on, clearly, and an obvious thing, battery life is much improved from my old 3-year-old phone. So, my 3-year-old phone, I was having to charge up during the day, or be mindful to have a big battery pack with me or whatever when I was commuting. This obviously doesn't need it. This has got it's bigger anyway because it's the Pro, and it's brand new, so it's gonna run for a lot longer and be a lot better. So that's been a nice quality of life improvement. I've taken the chunky weighty battery out of my work bag, and it feels lighter now, which is nice. Like I said, the weight of the device it still feels good in hand, but it is noticeably lighter. Even so, being a Pro Max, it's lighter than the Pro used to feel, which is great.
Yeah. Just going on the battery though, it's funny. Different reviewers have different opinions on what a good battery life should be, and I think it's due to the amount that they use it. Because I remember moving from my Samsung phone to the iPhone 14 Pro Max and thinking, geez, this is like a really long battery. I'm struggling to kill this in a day. And thinking that's really good. And the 14 Pro Max has been criticized for its battery life, I think, in the previous review cycle. And again, I was just surprised that so many people were kicking off about it. And it's supposed to be similar to the 14 Pro Max, if not a little bit longer, because it's got a more efficient chip. But I always thought the battery life was great. But there's always some people who think it's not long enough.
I guess it depends on your needs, doesn't it? Like when I'm at home, I'm still sitting at 50% when I go to bed. And if my phone has gone from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed, and it doesn't need me to recharge it at any point during that day, or require me to be conservative with my use of it, then I'm cool with that. And I know, and I'm not probably the absolute heaviest user, but I'm on it fairly regularly. If I commute, then obviously it gets more use. It's music, Bluetooth, probably more browsing as I'm sat on the train, rather than sat at home working. So there's obviously some increases in demand on it there, but even then I haven't got it to the point yet where I'm going, oh no, my battery's really low, I must stop using it, or I must go and charge it.
Yeah,
which has been good. And no problems at the moment. But like I said, I'm probably not the absolute most intense user, but I'm far from being a light user either. So I think it's fine. Again, I kind of understand and accept that when any phone gets to a couple of years old, you expect the battery life to be poor. Like it's going to go down. And that's just the nature of the lithium battery technology. There is nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
That is the world. No one's going to fix that until they change lithium batteries.
True. You can
for something new.
Graphene batteries, that's the future, I think.
Is that the future?
Yeah.
Graphene.
Yeah. But you can replace the batteries, and it's not that expensive actually. I think Christina was looking at replacing it for her phone because she's got the 10XS, the iPhone XS.
Yeah.
So that's quite old now. That's like almost 4 or 5 years old.
I was going to say it's got to be 4 or 5 years old.
So the battery is the main thing that's suffering. Everything else with the phone is pretty much fine. It's just the battery that's suffering. And she looked, and I think it's like £70 or something to replace the battery, which compared with a whole new phone is way cheaper.
And I'd be interested to see if that gets easier and cheaper with the newer phones because of the new repairability of the devices. Because these are theoretically easy to take apart and repair.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's going to be easier for third parties to replace them, or even cheaper for Apple to do it if they decide to make it cheaper.
Yeah. Very true.
I have to say though, and this is slightly on another subject, but in terms of the service you get, we've said this before. You pay a premium, and you're paying for a premium service to get the Apple Care, if you want to call it that, without referencing the Apple Care product. Yeah. So like I was mentioned to you the other day that I had an issue with my AirPods Pro that at this point were 3 years old. But for about 12 months, I've been living with a crackle in one of the earphones. Just when you first put them in, they would crackle quite loudly, then they would go away and they'd play perfectly fine. And then in recent weeks or months, they started to crackle when walking. So like they would crackle on impact.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is ridiculous. I need to go and find out if there's anything I can do, because they were getting to the point where I didn't want to use them. And I went into the Apple store. Bear in mind, they were 3 years old. And they looked at the problem. They said, oh, yeah, this is a known issue. We kind of dealt with this a couple of years ago. Yours is out of warranty, but because it's a known issue, we'll do it for free if we can confirm that is the problem. They took them away. They tested them in a little machine for 5 minutes. They came back and said both earbuds were duff, which I hadn't noticed. I'd only noticed it in one. And they replaced them, no questions asked, at roughly a cost of about 175 quid to them.
Yeah,
is what they would have charged if I'd had to pay for it. So, and there was no, I'd got no Apple Care or any kind of product protection on those devices. I've only ever bought it for this iPhone. It's the first time I've ever paid for it.
Yeah.
So I think you do, and I've had a few examples of that where things have gone wrong with an Apple device, and then Apple have dealt with it in a really impressive way.
They do seem to be quite, especially known issues. I think I mentioned this about my brother-in-law getting like a whole new MacBook Pro, like current year MacBook Pro, after having an older version of the MacBook Pro that had this known graphic issue. He brought it in with this graphic issue, and it was probably about 4 or 5 years old at that point, maybe even longer. And they said, "Oh, it's a known issue. We can replace it with this year's model," and then just gave him like a brand new MacBook Pro. So, and that was again out of warranty, and it was just because it was a known issue. So they are good, I think, if you bring in something and it's part of something that they've recognized before as a known issue. So yeah, I mean, I'm actually going through a bit of an issue with my AirPods Pro 2 at the moment that I probably ought to go in and try and get fixed as well, which is it doesn't wirelessly charge. It doesn't seem to be wirelessly charging for me, and I've tried out on a bunch of different wireless chargers. I even bought a recent tech purchase actually, which was an Anker like nightstand charger where you can put your phone on the kind of side display. I was keen to get the nightstand mode that you can get on the iPhone, the iOS 17, excuse me. But also on the bottom it has an area that you can put your AirPods to charge as well. But I tried it on them. I tried it on my previous wireless charger, and they don't work. It makes the little ding, and then it just goes off, and then you look at the battery levels, and it just doesn't increase over time. So,
yeah, weird. I had a similar issue with my AirPods Pro 1 because they also wireless charge. And I would put them on the wireless charger, and it would wake up the wireless charger. The light would come on, then it would go off, and I thought the same. I thought it's not charging.
Yeah.
But mine did then charge. It was just like the light went off, and it carried on doing its thing in the background. But you should definitely take that back because I'm sure they'll sort that out for you. It should be relatively easy to fix.
Less than a year old as well, so
they'll just give you a replacement case. You should 100% take that back.
Well, I might cheekily ask if they do give me a replacement case, because they've just upped them to the Type-C versions, which would be a dream.
Yeah, I don't think they will.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
I'd hope my replacement was going to be like, if they just give me a brand new product. But in a way, I was relieved because I'd had my case customized when I purchased it.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Have stuff put on them, so I was quite relieved in a way they didn't replace it. But anyway, so I guess a couple of other areas we wanted to talk about. The cameras were one of them, because obviously that's a big feature of the Pro, and they made a big fuss about that when they did the release of them. So obviously, again, caveat, going from the 12 to the 15 has meant a significant jump for me. My wife's got the 14 Pro, like you, and I have to say I was really impressed with how much better her camera was, and have been for about a year that she's had it. Very noticeably better. I mean, even the glass on the back of the phone, sizably bigger than the 12 lenses. Yeah. So that's going to let more light in. That's going to give you better performance in low light, and that came across really well. The new features in the iPhone 15 that support the cameras, the things like the automatic portraiting, even if you don't put it in portrait mode, recognizing people, all that kind of stuff has worked really well. Obviously, I've got to benefit for the first time from the sort of faked bokeh effect on video as well as pictures now. Because
yes,
the 12 Pro didn't support that.
The cinematic view, really, isn't it?
Cinematic, that's the one, yeah. I also, though, just noticed yesterday, I shot a little video of my son, and we were trying to get him to try a sour sweet. We wanted to film it because we thought it'd be funny. And I was doing it in slow motion. So I was on the slow-mo setting. And actually, even then, just the quality of the lenses created a really natural and nice distinction between him and the background.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking as I was filming him, this looks really good.
Yeah.
So I've been very impressed with it. The ability, that 5x zoom on the telephoto lens has been really good. So we were at a party recently, and again, my little boy was running around on the dance floor having a great time, and I just got the phone out and started filming him, just from a distance. But
nice.
I didn't have to look too invasive or anything. I could just kind of pop in and create different looks to the video as I was filming him as well. So I could pop in really close and crop in on his expressions and pull out and show the scene and what he was doing, and then kind of jump back and forward. Really like that. It allows for a lot of creativity. I haven't used the camera extensively, to be honest. I've not tried to put it through its paces as some sort of pro photography device. But what I have used it for, I've been really impressed with.
Yeah. Because the other thing,
it's a nice natural step up.
The other thing is the output of the files, the megapixel count of the images that are produced at the end have doubled, I guess, essentially from the previous generation, from I think 12 megapixels to 24 megapixels.
Yeah, and then you've got the 48 super mega picture.
You get the super mega raw, yeah.
But you can do that, I think, RAW and JPEG now, can't you? I think wasn't that another advancement that you can now take that 48 megapixel in both? I don't bother with the RAW anymore. I used to do RAW back in the day when I used to be more into photography, or have more time. Not more into it, I'm still into it. But I had more time to sit and edit things in Lightroom and play around. But I don't bother anymore, to be honest. I just shoot what I can in camera and use it where I can from the camera. I'm excited to try and use it to make content at some point, because I do think that the camera is going to produce really nice results. And put that alongside some of the action cams that I've got, I think it could get some really compelling footage.
I like the idea of plugging in like a external storage whilst you're filming, whilst you're going around as well, because you can film.
I think you need
really
a specific type of storage, don't you? And they're not cheap. I think oh
really?
It's a particular grade external device. It's not just any old external storage. I'm pretty sure it has to be a certain type and a certain write speed. But that's fine. I mean, it's aimed at pro photographers. They will probably have this kind of equipment anyway as part of their normal camera setup.
It's probably just like an external SSD that you can pick up. Like one of the Samsung T series is a quite quick ones, and I think SanDisk have some really fast ones as well. Even that stuff would probably do, I'd imagine. But I just think it's really cool that you don't even have to faff around with exporting the videos to a different platform to plug into your computer. You can just put it on the external device and then just plug it into whatever thing you're using to edit the video like straight away, and you can edit on that device as well.
I do want to have a go at shooting into the photography mode and shooting straight to laptop.
Yeah, that's also cool.
That looks really good as well. I used to do that with the camera setup back in sort of when I used to mess around with studio photography. But again, that's really the only reason you would do that
in a studio setting.
You need to be in a static environment where you've controlled the position of the photograph that you're taking, and then you want to pump all those pictures quickly into your device.
If it does videos as well, though, you can imagine using it for like
I
recording.
don't think it does
podcasts.
videos straight to
does it?
laptop though. No, this is the
Okay,
thing. So
right.
I think the video, if you remember on the talk, the photo they were very specific that the photo is shot straight to laptop, but the video is shot straight to a hard drive.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that means that you can do both, and they just didn't explicitly say it, but they did make the distinction that the photography example was straight to laptop, and the video one was straight to hard drive.
Mm.
But that might just be because of the maneuverability and portability
Yeah.
that they probably perceive you to need. So cameras, really impressed, really like them. They're kind of everything I was hoping they would be, but I'm not comparing them or benchmarking them. So this is just one person's impressions after a 3-year upgrade. So they're great, but are they much better than yours? Probably not. And I think we did do a little test.
We did do a side by side when we saw,
and they weren't radically different, even the 5 times to your 3 point whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's a nice step up, and certainly if you're going from a couple of 2 or 3 year old phone, it feels good.
Yeah.
USB-C you wanted to talk about a little bit. I'll be honest, I don't have a huge amount to say on the USB-C side other than it's on there. Obviously I wirelessly charge like you. I've got a MagSafe charger for nightstand, and that my watch goes on, etc. So I don't really connect it very often. I use it in the car. So I was a little bit nervous that my car stereo and setup might need some sort of upgrade or enhancement, or I might need to buy a specific type of USB-C cable.
Yeah.
But I'm pleased to report that I just stuck a generic USB-C cable in that I had at home, and it worked. So that was fine.
That's always the fear, isn't it? That Apple would have some kind of proprietary Type-C stuff. Because, there's a lot of devices that have to have the made for Apple tags on them. And it's got some kind of protocol that's built into the USB cables and stuff.
I was more worried, if I'm honest, about and I know I've heard a lot about this recently, the kind of differences in what USB-C cables can do. Not all USB-C cables are made equal.
Yeah.
So, for example, the Meta Quest, you can buy a link cable for it, and that's a quite expensive cable. And there's a reason for that, is because it's designed, and it's quite long, but it's also designed to deliver more than just kind of power, for example. Yeah. So I was just a bit concerned that I might stumble across something like that, but pleasingly, that hasn't been a problem.
Good.
The generic USB-C cable I had lying around just worked, which was great. It's more convenient at home in terms of just being able to plug it into stuff. In fact, one thing I haven't tried it on, which I will try at some point, although there's a slight fear that I might damage the phone, is my USB-C dock, which my Mac and my iPad both work on. So my Mac and iPad can be connected to that, and it's got a hard drive connected to it. It's got a monitor connected to it. Got LAN cable connected to it. So I don't know whether it would work or not. I'm slightly concerned if I plug it in that the voltage would be a problem, but I guess it probably wouldn't be. So we might try that at some point.
Because you can just plug it straight into a monitor now with Type-C. I mean, I think you could get a converter and stuff before, but
yeah, that's why I'm wondering if it would just work if I plugged it into my monitor.
Apparently it does. I've seen a couple of clips online of it working. Yeah.
So I might give that a try just for the sake of it. But otherwise, it's just streamlined everything, I suppose, because my iPad Pro is already USB-C, my MacBook's USB-C. It simplified everything that I need to carry around. The only thing I probably need to carry still is a USB-C to Lightning connector, just so that I can charge my AirPods, Max and Pro.
Which you can do from your phone now.
Well, I was going to say, which I can also do from my phone. So theoretically, my phone's battery could provide the power for those devices as well if needed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, my kind of Apple toolkit is it's complete. It's all up to date. It's all USB-C now, and that does make life a lot easier. And I guess at some point in the future, once those other devices move over and they reach a natural upgrade point, then everything will be USB-C, and we'll wait for the next connector type to ruin standardization.
I feel like it's got to be the final one. I mean, it's so good compared to the previous ones. It's so...
Will it get smaller? It could get smaller.
You don't want it
smaller.
Micro USB was smaller, I guess, technically, than USB-C.
Yeah.
But it was just so fragile, and it kept breaking all the time. So the fact that you can have... I think it's the perfect size. My personal preference, I think,
perfect size.
To stick with that.
But I guess we're back in the 30-pin connector days. No one was overly concerned about a 30-pin connector, and then it went down to Lightning, and everyone went, "That's so much better."
Yeah, true.
It's one of those, isn't it?
And even that was fairly rugged. Well, the actual connector itself, maybe not the cables that went around it. They're often breaking, but connector was good.
last thing that I wanted to touch on then, before we get into some of the stories around the phone and whether I've experienced any of those things, is just the gaming side, which I think we talked about when I
Yeah.
mentioned why I'd selected the one I'd chosen. So mentioned, I'd gone for the bigger storage to be able to buy these games when they came down the chute. They're not here yet, as far as I'm aware. I don't think Assassin's Creed Mirage has hit the iPhone yet. I've not seen anything
Yeah.
promoting it. So there isn't any of the high-end games to test on it at the moment. However, I think I mentioned on a previous episode, I had recently bought this Backbone device on an
Yes.
Amazon
That's going to be great
Prime
to test
deal.
them out.
Yeah, so now that I've got that working, and I had to do something to my PS5 setup, which basically was just hardwiring the PS5 to get remote play to work more consistently. I have been able to play the PS5 in remote play using the Backbone
Yeah.
on the iPhone, and it's a really good experience. It works well. The controller feels nice, which I think does help because it feels like a premium video game controller. It doesn't feel cheap and nasty. It's got a good overall feel to it. So the controller's great. The phone is obviously more than powerful enough to run these remote play experiences, but then so were the previous ones. So
True.
not sure how big a step
True.
up that is. What I haven't been able to test yet, and I'm interested to test, is how well the phone runs those games natively. So everything I've tried to date has been streamed or relatively low power. Most of the iPhone games aren't particularly demanding. I'm waiting for those big heavy hitters to come to the phone, which they talked up at the launch of the Pro as being one of its main functions or features.
Yeah.
Being able to deliver these next level gaming experiences. I haven't bought Assassin's Creed Mirage, and I'm sure I will on console at some point, but I'm so far behind in the Assassin's Creed series. There's part of me that thinks maybe just for this one, I might buy it on the phone and only on the phone, and just try it on there, and then perhaps pick it up on disc for the collection at some point in the future when it's cheap. So I'll wait to see if that,
especially if you're on the train, just kind of loading it up.
Well, that's my thinking really. I mean, I wouldn't normally buy a AAA experience like that to play on a phone. Normally, I would want to play that on my console, on my big TV or whatever. However, like I say, given that I've got this kind of hardware setup, as a one-off, I might be tempted to give it a try just to see how the experience differs, or how good it is. So I'm excited to try that, but unfortunately, haven't been able to test that as of yet because the functionality isn't. There's no games out to allow you to test it yet.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a couple of games that a lot of like mobile gaming reviewers use to benchmark things, and one you might be particularly interested in. Is Genshin Impact is one that's quite popular and that's quite demanding on the phone, but also I think it's Pokemon Arena is another one. Just like like arena, almost MOBA tower defense style game, I believe.
Yeah.
But it looks quite cool and it's quite demanding. I see Dave 2D plays that a lot whenever he's benchmarking phones. So there's a couple of really quite powerful games on there that you could play already. Not quite the AAA level, but
I think I mean anything that could run on my old phone, I'm not so interested in, to be honest. Because I just think it's not proving anything. What I want to try is something that we've never seen before.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. There are some top end games out there. I mean, there's some great looking stuff on the App Store in general. The Apple Arcade is a really good service. I've had it for a while now, and it's great for the kids because there's so many predatory apps on the App Store that want to pump you full of adverts every few seconds or encourage you to buy tokens or in-game currency and whatever else. And there's a few of those on our kids' devices because they don't have a similar experience without those features on the arcade. But quite often I'll push back and go, no, go and find something on the Apple Arcade because they don't have adverts in, they don't have those kind of predatory methods in them. And it's the adverts that annoy me more than anything because I've watched
like every 10 seconds.
Play these. Yeah, it is literally every 10 seconds. And it's so frustrating. But they don't care. I don't want that to be a normalized thing for them. Just expect to be pumped full of this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I guess, my take on it. Am I pleased with it? Yes. I don't regret my decisions. I am really happy with it. It has already become just a normal part of my life, like many iPhone upgrades do.
They're quite seamless,
quickly.
Aren't they, the upgrades?
Yeah, like I upgraded it. The transfer across was pretty straightforward. Sorted out the handful of apps that needed a bit more care to get them properly moved over, but everything just worked. And you quickly forget that this isn't the phone you've had for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
I sometimes remind myself that I've got this new device. The screen size has now just become normal to me, and and all of those things. So yeah, really pleased with it.
Good, good. It's got me thinking about it as well, because I know I can upgrade at any time with whatever plan I've got. And I'm still considering about walking into the O2 shop and picking one up. But yeah, I don't know. It'd be good to get your take on some of the issues that have cropped up, just to help me
Go for it.
figure out that decision. But so I guess one of the first things that came up in the news was this issue of overheating. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but actually, in researching for this, it looks like it was a bug in iOS 17 rather than the actual hardware itself, although I'm sure the hardware itself didn't help. There was theories at the time that, they've made it more repairable, that there was something that would be kind of suffocating the battery a bit more to heat it up. But I think it's just come out that really it was just a bug in iOS 17, though I still think there's reports of it getting quite hot even now. But I don't know if you've experienced any of this. A few people have said that it would just randomly heat up in the pocket for no reason. I think Marques Brownlee said that on his review.
Yeah, I don't know whether that was because they've patched iOS 17 a couple of times already since it launched.
Yeah, which is always a good sign.
Yeah, so whether they've patched that out or not, I don't know. The answer is no, I haven't experienced it. The only time I picked the phone up and thought, that's quite warm, was one morning off the charging dock, where it felt a little bit warm. And I thought, is that anything to do with this issue? But honestly, nothing since. I use it fairly regularly. It's usually on my person, in my pocket, and I would notice it. And I used to notice on my old phone at times when it would run hot, and it wasn't abnormal.
Yeah.
But no, nothing. When it's charging, I always think that's one of the more obvious times you'd expect the phone to be a bit warmer. And I'm kind of accepting of that. So again, I didn't think too much of it taking it off the dock, but I've not noticed that in normal day-to-day use.
Yeah.
I have to be honest. And I would say, if that was the case, this is not like the Apple fanboy in me being protective. I would genuinely say if that was the case, and I've had no problem with it.
Fair enough. Well, it sounds like it might be only affecting a few users then. And with the bug update, it might be fixed now as well. So I guess we'll keep an eye on that. But the other issue that I think we'd spotted was the issue of the phone bending. Not bending, but cracking when it was bent. And I know you're not the biggest fan of this idea.
Does.
Yeah. But I suppose some history on this before we actually take a look at this video by Jerry Rig Everything, which is quite a popular channel on YouTube for durability of phones. He tries a bunch of different tests on them, including bending. We'll get to that in a sec. But I don't know if you remember that it was the iPhone 6. Have you heard of Bend Gate?
Yes. Yeah, and I do remember I had a friend who had the iPhone 6 Plus, I think it was.
Yeah.
Put it in his pocket, sat down in the car, and he bent it.
Yeah.
So this was I am aware of that, yeah.
It was more severe, I think, than what's happening to the iPhone 15 Pro, because it was just bending in people's pockets. It didn't need much pressure at all. But it's just interesting that we've come full circle again to potential issues with durability on the bending side of things. I know you're going to rant about it, but there's basically, for those who were watching on YouTube, I've brought it up on screen, is the video by Jerry Rig Everything. Great YouTube channel for just general durability. He brings up a few of the materials that are actually used to make the iPhone 15 Pro, and goes through the durability of each of them and the grades of titanium, for example, that he talks through, and actually how expensive the materials are and how he's impressed that these materials are used for the phone, especially for things like heat resistance and lightness, durability, things like that. He goes through and he does his standard tests which he does on all phones, which he does lots of scratching with various different levels of hardness. And it's usually, light scratches at level 6, deeper grooves at level 7. That's the standard thing that comes out of his channel, and you can see that on the phones itself. So I think scratching is like the same as pretty much every other phone, is what we've seen. So light scratching at 6 and deeper grooves at 7. It's really quite hard to watch some of this stuff, but he goes and scratches some of the outside of the phone. And you can see that if you do scratch off the paint, it does reveal the underlying titanium color. So that's just something to be aware of if you're going for like a colorful version of the titanium phone. But the most popular section of the video is as you get later on, He also does a bit of a burn test on the screen, which never really reveals much. But
yeah, I'm always like, what? I mean, in what world is your phone being in normal use being exposed to a direct flame? It's just so.
you mean you
Anyway, go
don't
on.
hover your phone over a candle, Jay, every so often?
No, I don't tend to just drop it on the hob either when I'm cooking at home, or I just think it's such a weird thing to test.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. He's putting it through some extremes, but that's pretty specific
That is very
as
specific.
as a use case. But anyway, go on.
But yeah, as I say, the most popular part of this video, as you can see just in this peak of the most popular played, is when he starts to bend the phone. And I'll just do this very quickly now. And he does it again with every phone. And you notice that rather the phone doesn't bend, but it does the screen, not the screen, sorry, the glass on the back of the phone does crack. And actually with not much resistance, I was quite surprised how quickly that happened.
I know he's putting quite a lot of pressure through that. If you look at his hand, you can see the shaking in his hands as his muscles are putting that force on. Watch him do that again.
Yeah.
Thumbs in, and then look at his hand shake. There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's put his thumbs right in the middle where it's cracked.
There is effort in there. I'll give you that. But I think the point is that he does this on every phone he gets, and it doesn't happen. This doesn't happen. I think he did it on the iPhone 6 back in the day, potentially as well, and that probably snapped in half. But yeah.
It's weird, because it looks like that video is suggesting it's a glass back.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, for all the world, it doesn't feel like glass.
I know. Well, I was surprised at that as well, because I thought it was like fully titanium. But I guess it must have like a glass layer on the back.
Yeah.
Must be quite a thin glass layer, because that looked like...
it looked very fine cracks, weren't they? Yeah, it looked very, very thin.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, it looks like it cracked the camera module as well in doing that. This isn't to say that
glass bit around it, not the actual cameras, though.
Yeah, this isn't to say that it's going to happen very often. It was quite a lot of force that was put on it, but in compared to other phones, it's less durable. I think that's the point. When it comes to any potential bending or cracking on the back, I would say. Well, if you imagine instead of
I think there's certain situations if you put your electronic devices in certain environments and they break, you should not be surprised they're broken.
Of course,
like that. It's not like that's something you would normally do. You're playing a game and all of a sudden you apply a bit too much pressure and snap. He's had to really push that.
Oh yeah.
So
it's not going to happen.
A door or something, or some situation where it's put under that pressure. Of course, it's going to break.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's the point, though.
It's a strange thing to expect your phone to survive.
Most phones do. That's the point, though, because he does this he does this test on every phone.
The phone's functionality is absolutely fine. It's just the delicate glass on the back.
Yeah,
which is really just an aesthetic feature anyway.
A very expensive to fix aesthetic feature, but yeah.
Is it expensive to fix?
Usually, the backs of iPhones, yeah.
Usually, but don't forget this is now.
I think this is
more repairable,
slightly cheaper.
Yeah.
But still quite expensive. I think the point is more, not the bending is less likely to happen in everyday life, but say if you drop it on its back, I suppose it's more likely to crack than perhaps other ones.
Did you do that test?
No.
So how do we know that it's more susceptible to being dropped and smashed?
Well...
Because that's dropping is a very different force.
Blunt force trauma on the middle of the back phone, which is essentially, I guess, what's kind of replicated with the...
It's not, though. It's bending. It's not blunt force trauma. He's bent it. It's a sustained pressure over time to bend that. That's not the same as dropping it.
I think I might
I'm just saying. I just think it's... What I'm saying is you can't make that assessment without accurately testing it. So if he's going to test it, a drop test, he should drop test it.
Yeah.
Not try and bend the damn thing. This is something that frustrates me. It's like, I'm not saying it wouldn't still break. It probably would. If they're premium devices, they do feel delicate. I'm not going to lie. Like, I wouldn't want to lob mine down the stairs and see what happened.
Yeah.
But my point is, I don't know. Is that a real accurate test of anything you're going to put that through in everyday life? No, it's not. If he wants to test its durability in everyday use, then drop it and see what happens.
He has done drop tests on other devices before, but I don't know if he's done it for this.
Yeah, well, that's suspicious, isn't it? I've dropped off iPhones before. My iPhone 12, in case, I dropped it multiple times, and it never marked. It went back to Apple immaculate. I don't know. It just frustrates me.
Just a cautionary tale there, Jay. If you bend your phone, just susceptible to breaking.
Do you remember the guy called Will It Blend? on YouTube.
Will it
And
blend?
he used to stick all sorts of high priced, expensive gadgets into blenders and just trash them. And that sort of really winds me up. It's like, I mean, that Jerry Rig everything's slightly different because he's doing. I mean, I'm gonna be slightly cynical. He's doing tests of a degree. He's doing a scratch test with a flipping Stanley knife.
Yeah. No,
a device designed to cut almost anything.
No, but
and he's surprised it's scratching.
No, it didn't actually scratch with a Stanley knife, and it rarely does. What he's got is these. They look like pencils.
No. What he dragged down the side of the paintwork was a Stanley knife.
Oh yeah.
That was a blade.
Oh yeah.
If you take a blade to a paint job, like go and take it out to your car.
Yeah.
What happens when you take a knife down the side of a car? It scratches the paint. I just think it's a really stupid test.
People want to see what happens when you scratch it, though. I think that's the thing. Yeah, it's not whether it's going to scratch or not. People just want to see what it looks like when it's scratched.
But what is the criticism he's trying to get out of that? What is he trying to prove? So, if you take a knife to a paint job, it scratches. Well, of course it does.
No.
And that would be the same on any other device. Yeah.
No, I think
What's
because he proves that he's not proving a point. He's just trying to show you what it looks like when it does scratch. I imagine. I don't think he's trying to prove anything.
He didn't need to scratch the entire phone like that, as you rightly said.
He does it with every phone.
He
not
just absolutely destroyed it. No, I know, but just I just really winds me up. I think as these things are so expensive, and not just Apple. This is any device, right? I just get really pissed off with this in any device. There's people around the world who would love to own these kind of products and have these kind of things, and then you've got these YouTubers who just buy expensive devices and trash them for the purpose of clicks. Ultimately, because what's he getting? What that device is useful to no one now. And he'll either get rid of it, chuck it away, recycle it, whatever. It'll go back to Apple. And that's like a 12, 13, 1,400 pound phone just destroyed. And
how many?
There's people out there that just don't have access to this stuff. And I just think it just feels wasteful.
How many do you think get destroyed in Apple's durability tests? I imagine quite a lot.
Yeah, that's different. That's done for a reason.
Yeah, but that's not shared with the public. So this is just Jerry Rig doing it for the public.
But it's not just Jerry Rig, is it? If it was just Jerry Rig globally, just this one guy, but then there are countless other YouTubers that are doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
It just feels wasteful in a world where we're talking about, we started by talking about fireworks and the environmental impact of fireworks, but then we're getting at the end of the episode and we're super comfortable with the idea of just trashing a brand new phone for clicks.
Because not for clicks.
But you're not proving
other purposes. There's
they're
educational
not accurate tests. It doesn't educate me. What I've learned from that video is if I try to apply excessive amounts of force to a delicate electronic device, that it will break. No.
More than other devices.
If I take a Stanley knife to a paint job on a device, it's going to scratch. Well, I didn't need you to tell me that either. I've not learned anything there. Do you know what I mean? What I want to see him do is drop it on the concrete when he's walking down the street. What happened? How many times did he have to do that to genuinely break it? It seems unnecessary to me. And like you said, it's hard to watch. It's not just because it's Apple. It's hard to watch on anything like that. Because you just think, why? It's so wasteful. It's such a shame to destroy these things. Because that'll end up in landfill. Or, someone might recycle it. Maybe. If you're lucky.
I'm not sure.
It's just going to be wasted. Anyway. That aggravates me, that does. You've set me up now for a day.
I like that.
We didn't even call it out, Robbie, but this is a morning recording. You made me get up at 7 o'clock to record this. And now I'm going to start my day aggravated.
I love it.
Morons on YouTube scratching devices unnecessarily and then trying to pretend like that's an accurate test. Come on.
It's accurate in the sense that it's consistent between every device he does.
Well, if you needed to watch that video to learn that a Stanley knife scratches paint and that by bending a phone it will break, then I'm glad you've learned something.
I have actually, because every other device that you bend doesn't break. So I've learned that it will break.
Get lost.
True.
Get lost.
It's true.
So your iPhone 14 Pro bends?
No.
Well, you said every other phone he's tested it on didn't break.
Yeah. It doesn't bend either.
Then bend your iPhone 14 Pro then.
No.
Do it now. Do it on camera. Get it now and bend it.
There's a video on that.
See how confident you are that it doesn't break.
He's already done a video on it, so I don't need to. That's the good service that Jerry Rig Everything does for the public.
The good service. Oh my goodness. Right, I think we need to wrap it up there before we get any deeper into this conversation about Jerry Rig Everything and his stupid behaviour. Right, anyway, that's all for this episode. Thank you very much for hanging out with us. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy hearing me complain about, like a grumpy old man, about the internet and the modern world. You can subscribe on YouTube or all good podcast services so you don't miss an episode as well. We will see you for episode 42.